So when I was in 7th grade, I wrote a letter to my dad and asked him to quit smoking. I told him about the evils of smoking I was learning about in social studies class. I reminded him that all of the men in his family basically had died by the age of 60 because of heart disease. I told him that I wanted him to live a long life so that he could see me grow up and so that we could have a lot of memories together. My dad quit smoking cold turkey after he got that letter, and it was a big reason I kind of got propelled into journalism, because I was very persuasive with the written word, apparently.
That's awesome.
He did, shortly thereafter, he did have a heart attack at the age of 42. He had triple bypass at the age of 62. But he did other things besides quitting smoking. He modified his diet. He started taking walks every single day. And eventually, he was in his 70s. And eventually, it was not his heart so much that was starting to fade. It was his mind. He would want to make sure that everybody here knew that his beautiful baby blue eyes made him look like a young Paul Newman. He would want everybody to know that he had beautiful, strong arches, that he would show off on the rare occasions that he took off his socks. He would tell you that his birthday was coming up, even when it was in July and it was 6 months away. And he'd like to boast a little bit about how humble he was. He enjoyed cooking. I see that now in my daughter, who loves to cook and entertain, sometimes even makes his special cheesecake recipe. My dad was also known for his sense of humor, and I see that also in my son, who has that same nice, good-natured, quick-minded sense of humor. And so when we realized that at some point some of that was going to start to decline, one of our clues was, yes, he made us a family dinner, and it was his famous chili recipe, but it tasted odd. It was a little sweet and tangy. We realized eventually what he had done is he put cranberries in instead of kidney beans. Another time, Mom had asked him they have a place in Arizona, and she asked him to put a bag of salt in the water softener down there. He poured in a bag of potting soil. So there were little things like that. He would sometimes confuse me eventually with somebody he went to high school with. But before it got too bad in the dementia, we decided to take a big family vacation, a European adventure. And one of the places we ended up for a while was Lucca, a beautiful medieval village in the northern part of Italy. And it was a 1.5 hour train ride to Florence. And my parents decided to take Sophia to Florence. At the time she was 11, to see some of the art museums there. And I stayed back in Lucca with Dylan, who was 6, to ride bikes and eat a lot of chocolate gelato, which we pretty much did every single day we were there. So they went to the Uffizi Gallery, among others, in Italy. And my dad was not a dawdler. So he kind of cruised through and eventually got separated from my mom and from Sophia. Several hours after that, my mom and Sophia returned to the place in Lucca, and they were surprised that my dad wasn't there. And then we got a little bit worried. Sophia got Dylan to bed so that he would not see how panicked we were. My mom started trying to call, find an English-speaking person at the police station, at the hospitals. And then for my part, I went to the train station in Lucca every hour that a train was coming in from Florence, because I knew even if Dad happened to remember what town we lived in, which was not one of his strengths even before he had dementia, that even if he got there, he would not really know how to get through the maze of streets to find the apartment that we were staying at. So train after train, hour after hour. I would run back to the apartment to see if any word had come. Nothing. There was, Papa was lost. So I met several different trains that night, and then the last train for the evening was coming in at midnight. We were all lapsed Catholics, but I prayed when that train was coming into the station. I prayed that I would see my dad step off. There were fewer people getting off the train at that point. And the doors opened, a couple people came out, and there he was. He was my balding, blue-eyed, 79-year-old dad shuffling toward me on the platform. And the family and I like to call this the night we lost Papa in Italy. But Dad had a completely different perspective. As we picked our way back to the apartment, he explained to me that after he got separated from my mom and my daughter, he eventually realized the only logical place he was going to find them again was going to be at the train station. So, and because he's not great with directions, he doesn't speak any Italian, he knew his brain was not working great. He was an analytical chemist his entire career. So what he did is he asked somebody to point him in the direction of the train station. He walked a couple blocks, he'd ask somebody else to point him in the direction of the train station. And bit by bit, block by block, he got his way to the train station it was early afternoon. And then he decided he's going to hardly go to the bathroom, he didn't have money for food, he's just going to wait at the platform to see Mom and Sophie return. What he did not count on was that my mom and Sophia, when they got to the train station several hours later, there was a train about to head towards Lucca, and they just jumped on the first car, and Dad never saw them. And then he was able to realize at some point he needed to get on that very last train, and so he did. So again, from his perspective, he was not lost at all. He was very methodical about what he did. And then in time, we had another 10 years of memories after that as well. He was eventually the last 6 months of his life, he was at the vet's home. And my dad, the other thing he would want everybody to remember about him is he had impeccable timing, and he ended up dying a week before the lockdowns from the pandemic, which we're very, very grateful for. He would have hated it if we were not able to visit him, as so many people were not. For him, he would say at the vet's place, he says he was just surrounded by a bunch of cranky old men. But my last big memory of Dad was my mom and I were there to meet the care team. He had finally been gotten a hospice team. This was now a week before he ended up dying. We were sitting around with the hospice team, talking a bit about how they would take care of him. For his part, Dad found this whole talk of his demise and his body care and his memory care very boring. So he sat in the corner with his head on his chest, his eyes closed, not paying any attention. At some point, one of the hospice nurses said that among other things, the service they would provide is that if he was, in bed a lot, which he never was, he was always very mobile, but if he was in bed a lot and there was a concern about bed sores, they would turn him to make sure that he didn't have any bed sores on his butt. And at the word butt, Dad pops his head up and opens his eyes wide and says, "Ooh!" And that was Dad. That was Papa. That was his sense of humor. We had 4 decades of memories after he quit smoking. So I want to say thank you to my dad for all the food, all the humor, all the memories, and the fact that we're still sharing his memories today. Thank you.